Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this free clip of aggressive progressives on the Young Turks. This is just a preview of what you will receive with TYT membership. That means exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and more of Jimmy, and of course, me. Check out this next clip, and if you like what you see, you can access full episodes of Aggressive Progressives by becoming a member. Head to tyt.com/join now.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Aggressive Progressives. I'm here with the Raging Agent Steve-O, Malcolm Fleshner, and Steph Zamorano. Hi, Steph Zamorano.
Hi, Jimmy.
So we're going to talk about Venezuela today, and there's been some new reporting from the New York Times. They caught up to us. Now, I like to play this video by Cenk Uygur. I'll just play like 10 seconds of it. Because it's like it reminds us what we do and why we do what we do here at the Young Turks, and what gives me, it takes a lot of energy to do this, right? And to do it well. I mean, anybody could show up around and do a podcast. That's why most podcasts suck, right? But it takes a lot of energy to make sure this is good and that we want to talk about things that we are passionate about and ideas that we're connected to and things that are important, right? And so that takes a lot of energy. It takes emotional energy. It takes actual energy just to get everything done. It takes coordination. So I just want to play this real quick again and remind you and myself and everyone here of like why the Young Turks even really exists. And why we do what we do. So let me play it. This is going back to Cenk Uygur talking about how misinformed the American people are on facts.
And whose fault it is.
And whose fault it is. And here we go.
From the CNN poll, we're not making this up, it's right from CNN.com. 43% of Americans still believe that Saddam Hussein was personally involved in the September 11th attacks on this country. 43%. Right now, in September of 2006, 5 years later. That is a stunning number. 43% of Americans are dead wrong on a fact, okay? You know what that means? That is a colossal failure on the part of the press.
So that's why I like to show that clip. And I just want to show you one more. This is an actual quote. This isn't made up. People are like, is that true? This is an actual quote. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. That's William Casey, CIA director. He said that. He really actually did say that. Now, what was he referring to when he was saying that, Jimmy? He was referring to our disinformation program about the Soviet Union. So we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false.
Well, that's a long time ago. It's the Soviet Union. Now it's Russia, and it's a completely different story about what the American public is supposed to believe about Russia.
Yeah, except
there's no disinformation campaign about what America's supposed to believe about Russia.
So again,
nobody's lying to us about Russia anymore, Jimmy. That's the Cold War. Those days are over.
So that's not true.
Well, Cenk's video. So Cenk's video is one of my favorite videos ever that he's ever done. But he's absolutely right that 5 years after the war, that 47% of Americans still believe.
3 years.
I'm sorry, 3 years after the war, 5 years after 9/11. But still, 5 years after 9/11, Americans still believe that Saddam Hussein was personally connected to the 9/11 attacks.
And later on in the video, Michael Schur says, yeah, but it's the American public's fault for not being inquisitive enough.
Jake goes on to get very angry at the media and
Michael.
And deservedly so, but that is a colossal fear of the American media. It really is. I mean, we should be embarrassed at ourselves for being so ignorant on something. That's like thinking that World War I or II, for that World War II was started by Poland instead of Germany, right? It's just getting a basic fact completely wrong. And half of Americans still believe that 5 years after the act happened. So, yeah,
but it's the kind of thing you would expect from a totalitarian country like North Korea or something, where they have an active government propaganda campaign that lies about the history. But that's the amazing thing about the United States is that people believe we are in this democracy where there's a freedom of the press and they act as checks on power and that they're independent. And when you read the New York Times, or the Washington Post, or you watch CNN, you're getting this news that is independent. So at least when the people in the Soviet Union knew when they watched when they read Pravda that it was just they're getting the line straight from the government. But people watch in the United States, they have no idea they're being propagandized. That's the real trick. That's the amazing part.
Well, yes, and it's because it's not all lies. See, like Pravda screwed up by being all lies.
No, it wasn't all lies. Of course, they have to tell some things that are true. You got to mix in truth with lies to make it plausible. But even then they knew. But here in the United States, yes, they mix in truth with the lies. They'll tell you the truth about things that aren't really that important, that don't threaten the powerful.
Exactly.
But when it comes to things like Venezuela or the Iraq War, or things where the elites are in lockstep, that's when you need to listen closely and go and pursue alternative news sources.
Yeah, it's just amazing how whenever there is some sort of war, that is the one thing that gets everyone on board. As much as everyone hates Trump and Bolton and Abrams and all of these guys, all the warmongers, when they say let's go, almost all the Democrats fall in line.
They say we can't believe we are entrusting Trump with the nuclear button, but we are going to entrust him with overthrowing the Venezuelan government. Sure, I mean, and they're not. Nobody calls them out on it.
And so
where's the resistance?
So here, exactly right. So we've already been debunking the CIA talking points and CNN here at this show specifically, and I'll show you. We'll go through it real quick. It won't take us but a second. So here's we debunked this about CNN's reporting.
And what is on the plane are basic goods, things that aren't available or accessible in Venezuela. Things like nutritional biscuits, toothpaste, toothbrushes, just basic commodities that aren't available or readily available to Venezuelans right now because of the regime that they're currently living under.
We know that the USA aid actually had arms and guns and weapons. That's how they do that, right? So they say, hey, we're going to bring in aid, and then they foment a civil war, and that's why Venezuela wouldn't accept the aid. And that guy from CNN is doing propaganda for regime change war, which is what CNN always does. And so then what did we show you right after that?
We're at a supermarket in Caracas called Gama. I feel lost in the supermarket coming here in Caracas. This is cheeses. There's a lot of cheeses and meats here.
Here you go. So we showed you he's going through a supermarket. That's propaganda that's happening. And of course, we debunked it. We said if you're reporting on Venezuela and not reporting this, then you are doing straight up propaganda for the Trump administration military-industrial complex. Bravo. And so there's that. And then people will say things like this. Yeah, North Korea also has a supermarket. They can take journalists too. So I'm not convinced by that footage. So if you don't know who to believe, CNN or independent journalists like Max Blumenthal or the Jimmy Dore show or aggressive progressives, then I would like to sell you some beachfront property in Florida because you seem pretty gullible. Okay, the next thing he says is, don't get me wrong, I know exactly why the US is concerned about Venezuela, but I can simultaneously oppose neocons' takeover of another country resources and think that said country's leader is corrupt strongman, limiting opposition access to the mass media. Now, I like to focus on this because this is what everybody on the left does, is they say, hey, I can oppose intervention, but I still have to repeat the talking points of the CIA, their reason for going in. So I say, yeah, I can think Saddam Hussein's a bad guy. I can think Muammar Gaddafi's a bad guy. I can think Assad's a bad guy. Before any invasion, the war criminals first launch a narrative. By repeating it, you are unwitting affirming their phony pretext for a coup and invasion. So that's an important point we've already made here. I want to make it again. We'll skip that. Oh, but here's something else we debunked. Washington Post said that there was all this support for this aid, this concert for the Venezuelan aid. That was a lie. And then they didn't tell you they lied about it. They just deleted it. So that's CNN, this Washington Post. And here's CNN talking about the aid being set on fire by the government. Here it is. It says, while a CNN team saw incendiary devices from police on the Venezuelan side of the border ignite the trucks. So that's false. That didn't happen. That's CNN printing a straight up lie. So that's a lie. That didn't happen. Their reporters didn't see that happen. That's a lie from CNN pushing war like they always do. And so here's the report from the New York Times that just came out, yesterday or the day before, that debunks CNN. Now, that was CNN's reporting 3 weeks ago. We debunked it in real time here. And now here's New York Times.
An American aid convoy engulfed in flames at a border crossing between Colombia and Venezuela.
cesar. Vamos a cesar. Vamos a dejar la violencia. Vamos a la violencia. Vamos a pelear primero.
The scene has become a critical flashpoint in the political and economic crisis gripping the country. Senior U.S. officials immediately seized on the incident, blaming President Maduro and his supporters for intentionally torching the convoy. But an investigation by The Times calls this conclusion into serious question and shows that U.S. officials raced to judgment without the full facts. The Colombian government released this annotated footage of the standoff. They circle the Venezuelan police near the trucks before the fire breaks out. The implication appears to be that the Maduro regime caused the fire. But note the timestamp in the footage they circulated. It suddenly jumps ahead by 13 minutes and misses the critical moments leading up to the fire. We obtained previously unseen TV footage that fills this gap and tells a more complicated story. So let's back up the TV footage and see what happened. A small group of protesters starts throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails. We'll focus on this one protester. Here we see him throwing 2 Molotovs toward police. Let's look at the scene again. 4 trucks are stranded on the bridge. The protester approaches from here, behind the 3rd truck. He launches 1 Molotov, but the second one separates, and the burning rag veers off toward the trucks, not the police. Let's fast forward a little, and we'll synchronize the security footage. We can see that a fire has taken hold on one of the trucks. This is just 30 seconds after the burning rag landed in this area. This sequence of events shows the fire was most likely started by an errant Molotov, not by Maduro's security forces. As the chaos was unfolding, the incident quickly escalated into a political firestorm. A Venezuelan journalist tweeted this report, blaming Maduro. 12 minutes later, Senator Marco Rubio retweeted the unsubstantiated claim. National Security Advisor John Bolton weighed in soon after. And then USAID Administrator Mark Green claimed that Maduro had ordered the burning. Secretary of State Pompeo tweeted out the same visuals that evening. None of the U.S. officials offered any definitive evidence supporting their claim.
Fantastic. So that's the New York Times. It took them 3 weeks to figure out what we figured out here and Max Blumenthal. If you look, that's from February 23rd. That tweet is from February 23rd. We reported it, I'm pretty sure, that day on this show. It says, not sure if the Venezuelan opposition activists disguised as Red Cross workers actually mean well. And now here's what Glenn Greenwald had to say. He says, New York Times expose on the lies about burning humanitarian trucks in Venezuela shows how US government and the media spreads fake news. As last night's New York Times expose proved, which just used evidence cited weeks ago by independent journalists, CNN outright lied to the world when it said a CNN team saw incendiary devices from police on the Venezuelan side of the border ignite the trucks. So do they get to keep, Steve, let me ask you, do they get to keep their Facebook page and their Twitter page? Does CNN get to keep their YouTube page? I mean, they're blatantly lying about foreign intervention. They're spreading fake news at the top of their lungs. So this is not equal enforcement of the rules, right?
Of course.
Okay. What do you think? What do you think, Malcolm and Steph?
I think, look, if you want to find out what's going on, the truth about what's going on in the world, you can watch Jimmy Dore show and the Aggressive Progressives, or you can wait 3 weeks and read the New York Times. But credit to them, that is a good report. And if you show the story, they went and asked Marco Rubio and some of these people about their statements, and
If I keep playing the video,
yeah, not the video, the text from the story.
Oh, okay.
They don't admit they're wrong, but they change their story. Well, Maduro's a bad guy, so whatever happened, he's bad.
Well,
he doesn't want that aid getting in.
I think the video is awesome. So yes, it took him 3 weeks, but kudos to him for putting together the video. The other important part is you see the National Police of Venezuela saying, "Stop the violence.
Stop the violence.
Let's stop," repeatedly. Plus, they're getting Molotov cocktails thrown at them, and I didn't see it. They didn't shoot anyone dead.
They didn't shoot anybody. They would have. If that was in Gaza, they would have got shot.
Absolutely, they would have gotten shot anywhere in America, right?
Yes.
I mean, if you have a cell phone, they might shoot you dead, right? Because they think it's a gun. But if you're throwing Molotov cocktails at cops, you will get shot.
No doubt. In America, you'll get killed.
So, the narrative that Maduro is a brutal dictator who doesn't allow any opposition, is, from this video at least, is just not true. I mean, he has very well-behaved police saying, let's stop the violence, instead of shooting dead protesters throwing Molotov cocktails. I think that's a story right there. I mean, that should be discussed, at a minimum debated. Is he a dictator when his cops don't shoot dead protesters throwing Molotov cocktails at them, right?
The evidence seems to say he's not.
Yes.
Again, another thing that we say here often, no one else says, what kind of a dictator lets a guy who's trying to seize power in a coup from him hold rallies in the middle of the state capitol? That's not a dictator.
He's a terrible dictator, Jimmy.
If he is a dictator, he's the worst dictator in history, because dictators are not supposed to let you have rallies to overthrow them in their state capital.
And if our policy is to overthrow so-called dictators, how about dictators who kidnap journalists
and kill them,
and torture, then kill them and chop them up, not even on their own land, but
right.
in another country, right? So yes, this is.
Are you suggesting that Mohammed bin Salman would not allow an opposition figure to declare himself the king of Saudi Arabia and hold giant rallies in Riyadh?
Probably not.
Listen,
I'm speculating.
So you're defending the military police, the Venezuelan military police, and they did shoot tear gas canisters at the protesters on the other side of the bridge, and that's what the CNN reporters or others claim. Those must have ignited the trucks. They didn't, but I know from the Trump administration that if someone's trying to cross your border, it's perfectly okay to tear gas them, right? I mean.
And the Obama administration did the same thing.
And the Obama administration too. So I don't see what they're doing wrong.
And the other thing I want to talk about is the Colombian government. Why did they take it to 13 minutes? So that is intentional.
Yes,
right?
of course.
That is intentional deception, or at least an effort to deceive. Right? That's very intentional. So why are we not talking about the Colombian government and how they can no longer be trusted in this entire situation?
Right. Well, isn't it, honest to God, doesn't it make you feel horrible about our press? Like, it's nice that the New York Times did this 3 weeks later, but it's not like they're out there regularly doing debunking of our misstatements on foreign policy.
Right. I mean, we're watching this, we're going like, credit to them, but it's sort of a surprise that they did it.
Yes,
because they don't. It's out of the ordinary for them.
They usually don't debunk the State Department on foreign policy stuff.
No.
Well, what should happen right now is that this should be a major news story that every outlet talks about for the next 3 weeks. Like, what the hell is going on? Why is Marco Rubio retweeting this? Why is John Bolton saying this without any evidence? John Bolton, is this what you do all the time? Yes.
If you're lying to us about this, what else are you lying to us about?
Yes. I mean, we should be holding their feet to the fire, but we know that's not going to happen.
Right. And you mentioned that the doctored video. It's doctored video.
It's doctored video.
It really reminded me. I don't know if you remember when that
James O'Keefe stuff.
But that Turkish, the Turkish ship that was sailing to Gaza, and the Israeli military intervened, and they made video, and they doctored the video. They made the video news ready. They gave them these videos that were ready to be published, and they circled the parts that they wanted to highlight and said, this is where one of the Turkish guys comes after, and it was all lies. It was all lies. The Turks were not armed at all, or the people on the ship were not armed at all, and the Israelis just came in guns blazing. But the Israelis videotaped it, doctored the video in the ways that they wanted to depict it, and then sent it off, and it was replayed all over the press. Which would never happen. If Maduro put together a video and sent it to the press, you think they would just air it?
No. So, but by the way, Israel gets to keep their Facebook page?
Yes.
So here, a little bit more. Glenn Greenwald says this is an amazing example of CNN outright lying. Not just printing something inaccurate, but lying for the US government by claiming that they personally saw something that even the New York Times now says never happened. That's Maduro's forces burned humanitarian trucks. US officials like Marco Rubio, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, USA aides Mark Green, along with media stars like Casey, I'm gonna guess that's Casey Hunt at MSNBC, and think tank experts like Danny Bahar, used Twitter to spread classic fake news to start a war. Does anyone want them banned from Twitter or their posts deleted? Yes.
Yeah, kind of.
Actually, no. I don't. I actually don't. I mean, I said that sarcastically because, well, why don't we hold them to the same standard that we hold other people? But of course we're not. You don't hold powerful, famous people to the same standard as unpowerful famous people or just unpowerful people who aren't famous. It's a totally different standard. It's a sliding scale of responsibility on social media, on Facebook and Twitter. And who gets to decide? Unelected Silicon Valley billionaires get to decide in conjunction with the deep state and unelected government officials. So no, I don't think anybody should get their Facebook page deleted. I don't think anybody should get their YouTube channel taken down. I don't think I think that Americans are grown up enough to be able to decipher what's, again, my whole life, the National Enquirer has been standing there as I check out at the Ralph's, at the supermarket. Now, I never thought for a second that that was gonna influence my life. So we already have laws in America. We already have American norms on speech. So if Facebook and Twitter are really the town square, we already have rules to determine how people interact in town squares. We don't need new rules. So that's what people are trying to do, and I'm against it. But Glenn Greenwald says it's so gross and typical how the New York Times published its story proving the US government and media lied about the burning trucks in Venezuela without crediting all the independent journalists who used the same evidence to prove this weeks ago. But it's beneficial the New York Times published this. While CNN lied to the world, claiming they saw something in Venezuela that never happened because they're trying to help the US government start a regime change war in Venezuela, RT presented the evidence showing it was a lie, copied last night by the New York Times. Who acted as state TV exactly? Well, we know who it was, CNN. And as Chomsky says, any dictator would be super happy with the obsequiousness of the US media. You don't need state media. They already do it. I showed you what Dana Bash did at the top of the story. Can you imagine her asking a different question if she was employed by the government? No, that's exactly the kind of question that somebody who worked for the Trump administration would ask. Except she works for CNN, which owns the government. And I love, this is my favorite, needless to say, the independent journalists who used video footage, photos, and other documentary analysis to prove right away that the US government's claims were a lie, something it took the New York Times 3 weeks to do, were smeared as Maduro apologists and Putin stooges, obviously. So that happened to us here, that happened to us here, that happened to Max, that happened to Aaron Matei. That we were, again, if you go against the establishment narrative, they immediately smear you as some kind of a Putin puppet, or you're a red, or you're a conspiracy theorist. If you don't buy into their conspiracies, they call you a conspiracy. So, and the whole point of the Young Turks, the whole point of alternative media, of YouTube media, is that we're supposed to push back against the government's narrative, and we're supposed to push back against the establishment narrative, which is why it's so mind-blowing to see that not happening as often as it should. But we're doing it here, and tip of the hat to Glenn Greenwald, and thanks to the New York Times for finally coming around and being almost as good as we were, except 3 weeks too late. And how does this happen? So you say, well, the news people, are they really horrible people, Jimmy? They're chosen. You have to remember, now I saw this movie called Broadcast News. It kind of explains how this happens. That they're not really in the business of news. They just happen to be selling news. But whatever gets the clicks, the views, and makes them money, that's what they put in front of the camera, right? And William Hurt in that movie he wasn't burdened by ethics, right? And so of course he moved up quickly and became an anchor because he wasn't burdened by ethics. And here's Noam Chomsky, he's gonna explain to you exactly how that works. Here we go.
I'm sure you're speaking for the majority of journalists who are trained, have it driven into their heads that this is a crusading a profession, adversarial, we stand up against power, a very self-serving view.
How can you know that I'm self-censoring? How can you know that journalists are self-censoring?
I'm sure you believe everything you're saying. But what I'm saying is if you believe something different, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting.
That's why I'm not sitting where that guy's sitting. And that guy is sitting where he's sitting. You get it? And if that guy was sitting here, this show would be a failure, because why would people tune in to this show if we were telling you the exact same thing they were telling you in the establishment media? There's no point to this show then. So that's why he's sitting there and I'm sitting here, and we're both successful.
But that's the argument that if you put this to those people in the establishment media or the corporate media, they'll say, nobody tells me what to say or what to do.
That's so funny. And tell that to Mark Lamont Hill, Phil Donahue, Jesse Ventura, Ashley Banfield, and Ed Schultz.
Right. Well, they're not the ones who are answering this question. They would not say that. But it's true. They are in the process, the weeding out process that these people that you mentioned are all victims of, you have to prove that you have internalized these messages. When Dana Bash goes and she's asking Tulsi Gabbard about Syria and Assad and chemical weapons attacks, and she's just putting forward the government propaganda on that and the straight government line. She thinks she's doing her job. She thinks she's being adversarial when she's just reinforcing the government CIA talking points. But she doesn't, that's not in her mindset.
Right, right,
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
So we have proof positive, right? Cenk was on the inside. He was told that his tone was not appreciated in Washington because he was too hard on Obama. And he's not supposed to be that way because he was on MSNBC.
Who they referred to, by the way, Obama, they're friends in Washington.
They're friends in Washington, right? So what happened to Cenk? He didn't get fired, which would have been actually better. I would have had more respect for MSNBC. They just moved him from primetime to Saturday morning to just kind of shut him up and keep him quiet.
And so and to send him a message. Look, we tried to tell you nice once. Now we're going to tell you again. And you're going to get your mind right? And Cenk didn't.
If he gets his mind right, then he goes back up to prime time.
Yes.
You know? So it's really interesting what, they also offered him a significant pay raise.
They tried to pay him off, basically.
Yeah, to just do 1 day a week instead of doing 5 days a week. So you go from prime time every day to just Saturday morning, you get a massive pay increase, and you get your head right in a couple years or a couple months, however long it takes, then you're back on prime time because he was actually good. I mean, they didn't want to just get rid of him because he was a good anchor.
He was winning his time slot.
That's right. So that's how it works. And because Cenk was being a pain in the ass and questioning everything and going after Democrats who were in power, they didn't like it. But if he played along, he would have Rachel's show right now.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yes, no doubt about it.
He would be number one, maybe number two, but he would be a top 1 or 2 anchor at MSNBC getting $20 million a year if he played along.
Yeah, boy, he really screwed up.
He's an idiot, this guy.
When you put it like that, I'm like, what is he doing all this for in Vegas? Head against the wall.
But it's also these.
And now when he gets it wrong, we come after him. The right wing comes after him.
But like if you look at Mark Lamont Hill, his experience, and we're going to talk about Chelsea Manning. She's a similar case where it's. Other people can see what happened to Mark Lamont Hill, and if you're another person in that profession, and you're trying to make your way in the media and in the news media specifically, and trying to work your way up, and you see what happened to Mark Lamont Hill, and you see what's going on in Israel, and even if it gives you qualms, you know to keep your mouth shut about it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And back to the example of Cenk, when this all happened to Cenk, you don't think the other MSNBC anchors are talking? Of course they're talking.
Of course,
right? And so do they want to get demoted? Do they want to have this big falling out? No, they don't. They're going to play ball.
That's exactly exactly.
And so with Chelsea Manning, my point is that there's a perception that Chelsea Manning was tortured in prison for being a whistleblower, but it's not really about torturing Chelsea Manning. It's about all the other potential whistleblowers out there having to see what happened to Chelsea Manning and then saying, okay, it's not worth it.
Yes, and even more so, and we'll talk about this during the Chelsea segment, but Chelsea's not testifying because just Chelsea testifying would send a message to other people that Chelsea's talking with and helping. And so that sends fear out through the whistleblower community, right? And so that's why she won't even participate in this secret thing. So that's also important to keep in mind.
Jimmy, I just want to add one more thing. As we're talking about Venezuela, I know we're wrapping that up, but I keep being annoyed every time I hear Marco Rubio having anything to say about it. Like, why did this guy suddenly insinuate himself in this conversation? And yesterday, evidently, he did this tweet, and the tweet was, "Today, another transformer explosion at the German dam in Bolivia state caused another massive blackout." Okay, so
now what's wrong with that?
Okay, so what's wrong with that is Senator Marco Rubio, an important transformer exploded in Bolivar, and that in part again collapsed the Venezuelan electric system. However, it was not in a dam, much less German. My name is Herman Dam. German dam. I'm one of the journalists who published the information. So it's like Marco Rubio has this inclination to insinuate himself into Venezuela, and he's like playing that game telephone, where you pass it on to me and I'll get it completely wrong.
Right, and that's Marco Rubio. And what's in it for Marco Rubio to push this narrative? Well, he represents a lot of people who are for a coup in Venezuela, right? So they're right-wing authoritarian, either Cubans or from Central, South, and Latin America, and that's who he's representing, because those people leave, right? When socialism takes over, those people leave, and they get upset. They want the Americans to go back. Those Cubans still want people to overthrow Fidel Castro. I mean, they
want to dig him up and overthrow him.
They want to dig him up. They still want us to go back and get their money back, right? So that's why, like, why are Cubans so right? So that's a big faction of them. And like when you see a lot of Hispanics voted for Donald Trump, you're like, why would they? Well, a lot of it has to do with that too. And so just like a lot of Hispanics are supporting this illegal coup in Venezuela, like Colombia is actually, the government is helping. Of course, Mexico is not, because Mexico actually has now a president who represents the people.
Yeah,
right?
and Bolsonaro in Brazil, it's massive right winger, is totally supporting Guaido, the opposition leader, because he doesn't want a leftist government in his sphere.
That's correct.
Which is curious, because I mean, it's interesting because Lula was the most popular politician in Brazil, and they imprisoned him on trumped up charges, and so he couldn't run for president. And then Guaido won. Lula would have won the presidency, but because they put him in jail as an opposition leader.
Bolsonaro won.
Bolsonaro, I'm sorry. Bolsonaro won because they put Lula in jail. And now they're saying, no, we got to get rid of Maduro because he puts his opponents in jail.
Yeah, I know. So here is, I don't know if you know who Representative Donna Shalala. Now what was her position inside the Obama administration? Was she Health and Human Services?
I think she was.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So she's now a representative in Florida, Donna Shalala, and her and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is a huge cheater, liar, and corrupt politician who commits fraud.
She got fired from the DNC.
She got caught cheating Bernie Sanders, lying repeatedly about it in the press.
And she helps out payday loans, which is like the worst
scum of the earth,
parasitic type of company ever.
Yes. So here's what they decided to stick their nose into Venezuela, and here's what they said. They said, on the other side of the bridge connecting Venezuela and Colombia, people are dying of hunger and treatable diseases. We're here to witness this firsthand and support the Venezuelan people.
# Viva Venezuela.
And so I said, there are more people living in poverty in the United States than there are people in Venezuela. These people are sociopaths and warmongers. They are the Democrats' version of George W. Bush. Lying warmongers pushing US imperialism while their own citizens starve with no health care. So and by the way, that's not hyperbole. I really think that people like Donna Shalala and Debbie Wasserman Schultz are actual clinical sociopaths. And that's the kind of people who rise to power in government often. And they're willing to do whatever they can. They're willing to cheat, lie, and even start a war that's going to kill a lot of poor brown people so they can maintain power. That's the definition of a sociopath. And we have the worst among us as our leaders, and this is proof of it.
I would like to ask them this following question. Should we invade this country? Let me tell you about this country. This country has the worst income inequality on Earth in the history of our planet at that. It has the largest penal colony, where it imprisons almost a 250,000 people. I'm sorry, 2.5 million people are in prison. 30 to 40 million people have no health care, and in their brightest, best cities are teeming with 10 cities of homelessness.
People living under bridges.
Yes, like ghost towns.
Eating out of dumpsters and garbage cans.
They have the worst gun violence of anywhere in the world. Their politicians are corrupt and bought by money and interest. In fact, their president had 3 million less votes than his opponent. And they sit on a lot of natural resources. Should we invade them? They'll probably say yes.
They might say. I wish.
Where are they? I want to invade them right away.
I wish Norway would invade us. Don't you wish Norway would invade us and bring us Medicare for all and democracy and a welfare state?
No, my point is, all of these reports out of Venezuela about how desperate the situation is, some of it's true, some of it's not true. They don't tell you what caused it. They don't tell you about the sanctions, the blackouts. There are a lot of problems in Venezuela, like there are problems in every other country. So you can tell any narrative that you want. You know why? It's just like the Bible. There are good parts and bad parts. All societies are like that. So I could take a camera and film the desperation in downtown LA. Just literally
Downtown Glendale.
Yeah, blocks away from City Hall.
Yes.
And you will see all of these people living in utter misery and desperation. And I could say, this is America, right? I could go to prison after prison and film them and say, this is America. And you can make a case for anything.
Right. Well, I mean, blocks from the White House, people eating out of dumpsters. I mean,
you know where I bet they would take those aid trucks is in Puerto Rico, where 1.4 million people are about to be kicked off of food stamps. But and those are Americans. Well, Donna Shalala and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, why aren't they going down to Puerto Rico and talking about how the suffering of the Puerto Rican people? I mean, or even in their own districts, for Christ's sake.
Right, in their own districts.
Yeah. We have a country that has crumbling infrastructure. The city of Flint hasn't had clean water in how many years now? We have lead poisoning and all kinds of toxic poisoning of so many citizens right here, right in our country. So we can paint any narrative that you want and justify any sort of invasion.
So I want to show you the State Department gives briefings on our foreign policy. And for whatever reason, the reporters there are allowed to ask real questions. And so this was under the Obama administration. So watch this.
On the air and said that they'd arrested multiple people who were allegedly behind a coup that was backed by the United States. What is your response?
These latest accusations, like all previous such accusations, are ludicrous. As a matter of long-standing policy, the United States does not support political transitions by non-constitutional means. Political transitions must be democratic, constitutional, peaceful, and legal. We've seen many times that the Venezuelan government tries to distract from its own actions by blaming the United States or other members of the international community for events inside Venezuela. These efforts reflect a lack of seriousness on the part of the Venezuelan government to deal with the grave situation it faces.
The U.S. has, whoa. The U.S. has a long-standing practice of not promoting, what did you say? How long-standing is that? I would, in particular, in South and Latin America, that is not a long-standing practice.
Well, my point here, Matt, without getting into history, is that we do not support, we have no involvement with, and these are ludicrous accusations.
Ludicrous.
Ludicrous accusations.
They also turned out to be true.
They also turned out to be true. We got to go. So when we come back, I'm going to show you almost the exact same script happened just last week. So that was from during the Obama administration. Now we have during the Trump administration.
That was when there was a coup an attempted coup against Chavez.
And so now we're going to show you what happens under the Trump administration and how there's a continuation of the policy. But right now, the free part of the show is over. If you want to see the rest of the show, you go to tytnetwork.com/join. You become a member. You get all the bonus material. You can watch the show whenever you want and all the back shows whenever you want, blah, blah, blah. So go to tytnetwork.com/join.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this free clip of Aggressive Progressives on the Young Turks. This is just a preview of what you will receive with TYT membership. That means exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and more of Jimmy, and of course, me. If you like what you saw, you can access full episodes of Aggressive Progressives by becoming a member. Head to tyt.com/join now.